first of all, I'm Taylor-Tovey. I'm the Project Director of AfF for Freelancers. I think most importantly, I'm a freelancer myself. I've spent over 20 years as but most recently as an exec and series producer in Factor Entertainment shows. And it was great to see that digital session now that lasts about using your skills in digital. I think this is a partner session to that, but this is more about building your portfolio, whether that's in digital or anywhere else. It could, you could literally go anywhere, wherever. It's kind of limitless in a way. Also, I read on LinkedIn just before this. Apparently, it's National Freelancer Week, which you should probably think I should know about. But anyway, it was only one post on LinkedIn, so who knows how true it was. But anyway, congratulations for being here on National Freelancer Week. So, on to this session then. For years in TV, all we've known is one thing, pretty much, and we can almost always depend on our industry for work year-round. And of course, there were blips, but now things feel like they've changed. And the concept of even starting to consider a portfolio career can be daunting. But does it feel like there's been a shift in mindset over recent... But it does feel like there's been a shift in mindset over recent months, just from freelancers that I've spoken to, from the sort of feeling of, why the hell can't I work in TV full-time anymore, to, okay, if I'm going to survive financially, I need to find a way of using my TV skills elsewhere. And the weird thing is, as soon as you work that bit out about using your TV skills elsewhere, it kind of actually allows you to stay in TV because you don't have to feel like you've got to move away from it entirely. And that's about building the portfolio. So my interest in this, so AfF for Freelancers is doing a lot of work in various different areas, including things like work-life boundaries between home and work life, and building a gold star end-to-end recruitment tool, supportive offboarding and onboarding. But I think one of the most exciting areas for me, because freelancers themselves have much more control of it, is for my skills training and professional development working group, and that's looking at things like skills-based CVs and building a personal development plan. And the reason being, the industry actually does recognise that there is a world-class level of talent in our industry, and it really wants to hold on to people like us, and that's why we're looking at doing that with the AfF for Freelancers group. So, the other thing I'd like to say is, let's not get confused with the other P word, which is pivot. And the reason I have an issue with the other P word is that genuinely I think if you're building a portfolio, as I mentioned, it allows you to stay in the industry. I think pivot suggests you're moving away and you're never going to come back. So I'm all about building that portfolio. So the good news is that we have a great panel here to tell us about this and how to build your portfolio. So I'll start from this side and work my way that way. So first of all, we got Dr Andy Sockanathan, who is a former development exec and now career change coach. We've got Perjit Aujla, executive producer, development exec and trainer for Screen Skills, PACT and RTS. Sorry, I did say I was going to go this way, but this is the one that's way on my script, so apologies. This is actually Clare Fisher, who's co-founder of TV Switch Up, specialist factual series producer and a senior press officer now for the National Trust. I'm also glad to say that Clare is the only freelancer who is actually on 2 of our AfF working groups and has really helped us on this exact topic about building a portfolio. So thank you so much, Claire, for that. And I'm going to start off with a question for you. How did you get from being a normal TV freelancer, in inverted commas, to working as a press officer, and then actually founding a group to help others do similar things?
Wow, that's a big question. I think it goes back to February 2024, when actually all the factual commissioners had sort of ground to a halt. And there was a group of Telemons Network, if you don't know the group, it's... and a group of us thought, well, we can retrain. Why can't we do other jobs? Why can't we look to see how we can hear about other people's journeys? So we started TV Switch Up on Facebook. And actually, what grew from that was a membership of 4,500 people, all TV freelancers, all mid to senior people who know they've got skills but don't know what to do with them, what jobs they can do. And so we started these talks, which I think we've done 40 now. And they are all TV people who have switched to other careers. So everything from marketing and comms, working for National Trust, moving into HR, counselling. And it's those journeys that have been very inspiring for people. And then TV Switch Up also is got all the members, and they help each other. So you've got people who, will ask questions. What should I do? I've got an interview with the civil service, and you get the feedback. You get real lived experience. So the group actually looks after itself a lot of the time. Anyway, during that time, I knew I would have to diversify, and I quite like the National Trust, and I've got one on my doorstep. So I volunteered there. I was a house guide, and then I saw a job come up. So I knew I'd work with press, and I applied, and I was had 2 very long interviews, and got the job. So that's part-time. I also developed as well, so I'm hoping to do a TV series there. And I love running TV Switch Up and working with Action for Freelancers.
Thank you, Claire. I can just imagine you, by the way, being a tour guide around the National Trust, so that sounds absolutely perfect. And actually, we're going to come on in a moment to talking about using your passions and perhaps engaging those and pushing your career forward with those and building that portfolio. Andy, you coach TV freelancers in career change. What kind of people come to you? What's usually the first conversation you have? And actually, I understand, so you built your own portfolio career as well, so how did you do that?
So that last one, should I go first with?
Please do.
Okay, so I've had quite a circuitous portfolio career. So I started off at 16 as a touring drummer around Europe with guys who were 10 years older than me. I was pretending to be this hard Britpop guy, but I got my mum on a PlayStation monthly during that time. I went to university to make my mum happy. Accidentally got first, became a philosopher. During that time, my friend's band got a massive record deal with Sony. I was the least irresponsible of his friends, so I ended up touring around the world with him. I quit the tour managing and my academia on the same day, so I had an interview with Kate Phillips for a job at the BBC on that afternoon. Got that job, got into quiz, devised sort of Tenable and Beat the Chasers and quite a few other things. About 4 years ago, I realised the writing was on the wall for the big sort of quiz, and I only did quiz, so I started sort of coaching people on the slide, and then got made redundant, did it as a full-time career, and that was about a year ago. This is all I do now. So there's my portfolio for you.
And actually, so what kind of people come to you?
Sure.
Because I was intrigued to know, is it the kind of freelancers that are in this room right now?
Yeah, so it's anything from people who've kind of showrunners or founders of companies to freelancers at every single level, really. Increasingly freelancers, really, wondering what to do, whether to pivot, whether to do a portfolio career, and everything between that.
Great, thank you. And Perjit, you're a freelancer who's built a portfolio within the industry. So tell me a bit about that. And also, did you have any fears about building that portfolio, moving it out of full-time production?
No, because it sort of came to me, I suppose. So it was quite organic. So I, like you say, I'm an exec, so I exec 4 days a week between 2 separate companies. So that's not necessarily part of the portfolio, but it is part of the patchwork of how I make enough money to pay the mortgage. And then the separate thing I do is the training. But I actually started training not that recently, sort of 5 years ago, and my impetus was slightly different. So it wasn't the telly-recession that sort of caused me to do that. I had a kid, and if you are a mum or a dad in here, you'll know that telly and young children are pretty much completely incompatible. So I thought, what else can I do that would help bring in an income stream that isn't sort of going back to series producing, which I was doing at the time. So I just sort of started kind of shopping around for little kind of side hustles, essentially. And then I was very fortunate in that my side hustle, which was being a trainer, came to me. So somebody who remembered that I was a sort of development specialist, this was quite a long time ago, remembered me, applied for a big tender that Screen Skills had put out for development training, and then approached me, and we filled in the tender together, and then we won the tender and we delivered it. And just through doing that, I realised I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to do it a bit more, so then I continued doing it. And I mentioned this to you the other day, but it took me ages to then say I was a trainer, because I just was I don't know, well, I'm a telly person, I just happened to do this weird whatever on the side. But actually, as time has gone on, it's made up a really kind of substantial contribution to my income, and lots and lots of other things that we can get onto. So that it sort of wasn't, it was deliberate in the sense that I was really keen to find something else that I could use in between sort of telly contracts, but the thing itself kind of found me, so I was very fortunate in that sense.
Great, and actually one thing that we talked about the other day, as you mentioned, was I think the interesting thing is that you might be a little bit reluctant to move on perhaps, and like you said, call yourself a trainer, but actually by doing one thing it can consistently lead onto another, which actually gets you like the job that you weren't expecting to get when you were the TV freelancer a year or two earlier. And that brings me to my next question, which is changing from what a freelancer has always known to start building something else can be quite a daunting thought. Is it a bit like the idea is worse than the reality though? And is it a moment you have to take a bit of a leap, or is it a bit more gradual, do you think? I don't mind who wants to kick off with that. Andy, you nodded there, so do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I think like the industry's on the precipice of a huge change, right? And that can be anything that's that big and scary is also quite exciting, right? So like a way to sort of reframe that, or the way that I work with my clients is, we're kind of moving from a world where there were these huge sort of media networks with really, really sort of strong gatekeeping, which were really difficult to get into, to a world which I'm trying to see as like a sort of plethora of audience business, loads and loads of people trying to get to straight to audience, right? And there's opportunities in there, so whether it's sort of brands moving away, I think Hal mentioned in the earlier thing, he's working with a brand who would have gone and put some adverts on TV, but instead of doing that, they're making a massive kind of Squid Game. So it just sort of shows kind of those broadcast skills that were there for 20 years are kind of migrating from a kind of gatekeeping world to a kind of wider world. Like I think an interesting thing last week that I sort of saw was Banijay announcing, is it the Players Network, the single Players Network, and a show called Jamie Vardy on the party. That is a sports network that's going to utilise like YouTube and social content and membership and all that to make sports entertainment format and completely bypass all of those gatekeepers. And that's Banijay doing that. So it's Banijay are doing that, brands are doing that, podcasts are doing that. So there are ways in which to look at this, which can start to make you feel like there's opportunities out there.
Yeah, I think it also, I suppose just to add to that, I think it just requires a bit of a mindset shift as well, because I think it's, when I first started training, and this was sort of like in the boom years, so people were like, why are you doing something other than television? And I was like, all the money and, all these kinds of the various kind of perks. But I think it's really easy to feel like because you're doing something that's not telly, and our identities, I think for loads of us, are so kind of wrapped up in our jobs because it's that kind of industry, you can feel like if you start to do something else, or you have to do something else, in some way you failed. But of course we haven't failed, the industry's failed us and the economy's failed us, and so we need to find other ways of doing other things. We need to adapt to that. And I just think sort of just giving yourself permission to go off and try something else, just try it gently. It doesn't need to be a sort of massive change. And I would say, like, to your point about pivoting, the other thing I would add to that is that ideally it shouldn't be you undertaking really costly retraining. It shouldn't be you starting from scratch in some completely different industry. You've already got tons of skills. It's just about looking at how you reapply those skills in a way that means you can take sideways steps, because for lots of us, again, our incomes can't massively drop, so we do need to be thinking kind of strategically about where we can move and use our skills, and thinking about it that way rather than thinking, do I have to retrain to become an X, Y, Z? I mean, hopefully not. There's lots of adjacent careers that are really complementary to what we do in television anyway.
Yeah, just on that identity point, I think that is probably the biggest thing that clients come to me with, is the question of like, who am I if I'm not a TV exec? Like who, like the biggest fear everyone seems to have is going to a party, somebody asking them what they're working on and them not being able to say anything, right? It's sort of trying to sort of reframe that mindset and like ask yourself the question again. If you want to find that kind of superpower that you've got, like I think Emil mentioned in the first thing, find that skill. I say underneath skill, you can find a thing called a superpower. If you want to find that, you've got to ask yourself the really difficult questions like, who am I? Who am I now? And what do I really want? Right? So I can kind of evidence that with a client that I work with. I can say his name because he's already out there now. So it's a guy called Tom Sutton who's done a thing called the Development Sprint. A lot of you will know him because he knows everybody, like that's one of his superpowers. So in the bit where we're searching for his superpowers, it wasn't just about going, well, I'm good at development or I'm good at this. Like his superpowers were he enjoyed variety, so he liked working at lots of different companies, and everybody knew him, right? So if you walk around like Banijay or BBC or ITV with Tom, all the MDs are like, all right, Tom, how you doing? Like, because he just worked with everybody. So he was a strange person. He was a developer who liked variety, so he liked working with different companies, but he wasn't how to pay the bills. So we came up with that thing called the Development Sprint, and that sort of became his superpower. So what it is a focus 5 days on development at different companies. So he goes to companies and says, you can't afford a development team, you're employing people 1 or 2 days a week, which is inefficient. Employ me and my bespoke team of researchers and APs, and you don't have to onboard us, you don't have to buy a development team to buy for 5 days, right? So that was sort of, I think we sort of talked to people talking about CVs in the last one. That all has become his CV, so the pitch for the development sprint. So it's just a way you can reconceptualise what you do, find the thing underneath it, and then go to market,
Great, thank you. I'm going to go to Claire. So you've gone slightly more out of the TV industry in your portfolio. So with TV Switcher, where are people telling you they're going outside TV? You mentioned the civil service, but it feels like you can actually use your TV skills in lots of different industries.
I think we're one of the most versatile workforces, full stop. And we're very adaptable and we don't realise it. We get sort of parachuted into a production and immediately got to take on everything that they believe in, what the idea is, what the client wants, what the broadcaster wants. And I think people become paralysed because they don't know what to do next and they don't know what they'd be good at. And at that point, we get asked that question a lot on TV Switch Up. And actually, listen to the talks. There's somebody who was a talent manager and she now does HR, and she says it's not boring, it's really interesting, I'm really helping people. Marketing and comms, this is a huge area. It needs media, it needs content. We can do that. So it's a place you can get ideas, it's a place where you can ask questions, and I do think that if you've got a hobby or a passion, lean into it, maybe upskill. I did a course in digital marketing. There's loads of free courses out there, and Canva, just get your hands on, and that will keep you going while you're looking.
You mentioned passions. Let's dig into that a little bit. What kind of passions do you mean? And again, also we talked about volunteering, and you talked about volunteering. So can you tell us a bit about that?
From my point of view, I loved historic houses and nosing around. So this was on my doorstep. So it wasn't like, oh, I've come to film here. It was like, I've come to volunteer and learn about it. We've had talks, I don't know if Cheryl's here, but she did a talk about counselling. She always wanted to be a therapist. There was a fantastic talk by Vic Thomas, who's head of production, and she's moved into civil service. And it might sound like a boring title when you see it on paper, but actually there is so much more to jobs than we think. And I think people just need to be curious and explore, upskill, talk to people, and just try, have a look.
Yeah, just on that, about how transferable TV skills are. If you compare, say, TV to if you're, I know, a kind of coder. You're essentially fucked if you're a coder, right? Because it's good. AI is definitely get the job. There's so many soft skills in TV, like politics, wrangling people, logistics, all that kind of thing. Which are, if you look underneath the things you've done, there's lots of lots of people I coach just presume everybody knows all this stuff, but everybody doesn't. It's just about finding the thing underneath all of the things that you've done and kind of surfacing it. Firstly, to make yourself feel better about yourself, because you can't really go and get another portfolio creator and feel good about it, but also so other people can see all the things that you think about. Yeah.
You know what? That you've actually brought me on to the next question, because it was about what hard and soft skills can you use from TV to work elsewhere. And the funny thing is, yesterday when we were preparing everything for today's event, we had a last-minute scramble because the actual lanyards, these aren't the ones that you should have had, right? So literally at 5 p.m, the ones that should have arrived earlier in the day, we discovered that a courier had said that no, I've tried to deliver, and anyway, it turns out they hadn't, and we didn't get them. So anyway, we used the skills that we have from TV doing a live show. We're like, no, we are not going to accept this. We're going to work it out and come up with a solution. And we all sort of did a mad scramble to make that happen. So what kind of skills like that are in demand, do you think, elsewhere? And actually, are industries appreciating them when they see them? And a thing that occurs to me is that we're used to moving at quite a fast pace in TV. Do places appreciate that? Do they use that? So Perjit, why don't you start us off talking about using your hard and your soft skills in other industries?
Possibly not the best person to start off with, but I'll just talk about my sort of experience, which is the training, because I was thinking about sort of how it is that I kind of moved from one to the other, and it didn't feel awful and scary. It did sort of feel awful and scary, because I had to do lots of public speaking, which I wasn't used to. But I was thinking about sort of my development experience, and actually, I think what happens in this industry, I'm sure we'll talk about this, is that you get all your kind of amazing skills get boiled down to your last 3 credits. That happens all the time, doesn't it? So people just say to you, what were your last 3 credits, rather than saying, can tell me about all the glorious skills that you've acquired. And as a consequence of that, you forget that you've acquired all these skills, and you don't bother digging into them, or you don't bother analysing them, because actually nobody's asking you to talk about them, which is ridiculous, and we need to talk about all of our skills more. But we're not our last 3 credits. We're a combination of our hard skills and our soft skills and our passions and our interests and our lived experience and all those kind of wonderful things. But when I was thinking about the sort of the transfer, so I did development for a really long time before I moved over to execing. And development is really writing, understanding a kind of a brand new topic that you might not be that familiar with, thinking about how you structure that, thinking about how you explain that to people in a way that's really kind of easy to follow, really coherent. And training is basically all of those things. It's think about a sort of concept that you want to sell to people, think about how you structure that, and then think about how you're going to say that in a way that people are really going to want to follow and understand. So it's the same thing. So I think when you start looking around and start interrogating your skills, you'll start seeing the application much better, but it's just about sort of kind of getting to grips with what your own skill set is, really.
Yeah, just on that writing skills thing, I think, most areas in TV, especially in editorial, teach you how to be a really, really succinct writer. The ability to top line things, people involved in lots of different industries. Got one client who got to the final 2 for a job as the speech writer for the Secretary of State. Because he was just really good at writing scripts, he'd just done it for so long, just knew how to do it, So if you really embraced a thing, there'll be 1 or 2 or 3 things that you do in your telly job, which you wish people asked you to do more. So it's just kind of thinking about those and how you can kind of mine those,
Yeah. Go on, Claire, do you have anything to say?
I've got some lists of skills, if anybody wants to see them. Great,
I think that's great, yeah. So I see they're on TV Switch Up, right, on the Facebook page.
Yeah, and we get a lot of people going, but I'm not an I'm an editor. And actually, I go, well, you work to deadlines, you know your software, you're always updating that, you can negotiate, changes, you take feedback, you're managing expectations. And I think you just need to sort of break down your job into bite-sized pieces that other people can see. And so we've got some lists, if anybody wants them.
Great, thank you. We'll see if we can share them on socials as well.
Sorry, can I interrupt? Just ask a question. Who feels really confident selling themselves just on their skills? Yeah, see, that's not a lot of you, and you probably all got, in this room there'll be years and years and years of experience, and that is not your fault, right? That is a consequence of the way that we are interviewed, the way that job applications are put together, the way that we are told to think about ourselves. You know, we should always be thinking skills first. Like, our skills are our currency. That is everything that you can use to sell yourself with. And we just haven't been encouraged to think that way. So I suppose the very first, absolute first starting point is just work out what your skills are. That will help you to work out what you're interested in. It'll help you to work out where there's an alignment between what you're doing currently and other industries. It will open up sort of the door to where you need to go next, I think. So
and it's not just what you're good at, it's what you're good at and like. Because there's millions of things you'll be really brilliant at being a TV producer that you can't really be bothered doing. But what are the few things that you are brilliant at and love? And that's the easiest way to kind of then surface yourself.
And also, last thing, your values as well. So I know values always sounds a bit sort of wishy-washy and vague, but it's so super duper important. And I think sometimes when you work at companies and you're sort of not getting on, or you're finding it difficult to work there, that I think is often a value mismatch. You believe in one thing, they work in a completely different way, you're sort of rubbing up against one another. But if you can work out kind of what things are important to you in a sort of value sense, then you can start kind of feeding some of that into your skills. And then when you start talking about your skills, they're kind of rooted in something that's really significant to you. And the other thing about your skills that I think is kind of brilliant is that they will be completely unique to you, because you're the only person who's lived the life that you've lived and had the experiences that you've had and done the jobs that you've done. So when you really get to the bottom of them, me and Claire and Andy and James will have completely different skills between us. And that's how you can start also making yourself stand out, because you can say stuff about yourself that nobody else can say about themselves. So that's the other kind of...
I've actually just seen someone in this room who I know. Loz, I'm going to single you out if you don't mind. So I've got a friend, Lauren, over there, and a really good example is this. Lauren's an amazing chef. And so Lauren has set up her own business selling brownies very successfully in her local area. And it's the kind of thing that you can do as an individual. And I think the thing that I was getting at before about it being daunting is that the idea of having to become a bit of an entrepreneur and sell yourself is actually quite a tough one to many freelancers, because we haven't had to do that, especially outside the industry. We might have had to sell ourselves in the industry, but selling ourselves outside of it is a really, really big thing. One of the reasons we're working on the skills-based CVs actually from freelancers is that it's about not only, hopefully selling yourself within the industry and not getting pigeonholed, but also outside the industry. It allows you to focus in on exactly what you can bring to take elsewhere outside. So whether it's like being a press officer like you've done, Claire, or whether it's doing something else. I heard someone was putting on events for the police force in Scotland. And I think you can use the skills that you've got, and you can, if you work out how to sell them, whether it's a skills-based CV or face-to-face. And so that brings me on to networking, because one of the things that we've tried to advocate for actually for freelancers is that all jobs should be advertised publicly, they shouldn't be in closed groups, and basically making opportunities available for everyone. But it still feels like a bit of good old-fashioned networking is really, really important. So, Andy, do you want to start us off on that?
Yeah, there's sort of been a lot been said already by other people about kind of DMing and stuff like that, so I kind of might go for that. I think I will talk a bit about LinkedIn though, so and link it to what we've just been talking about. So that whole thing about surfacing the thing you're really, really good at. When you're on LinkedIn, part of it is DMing people. It's also talking about the thing that you're really good at. So like I've got a client who pretty much established a visual structure for most of the great reality shows that you've seen. So I was just talk about that. Like what people like on LinkedIn is you talk about something and they see that you're on your profile and that you are really, really qualified to talk about that. So as I don't want to dwell on this too much, but in saying the maths controversy, I saw I don't know her name, but a welfare executive giving her opinion on it. I want to know that because she knows all about that. So part of networking, really, one part of it is just starting to put stuff out in the ether about something that you really, really know about, and then having conversations with people in the comments, even just getting people commenting on you, commenting on other things that you find interesting. That's a sort of like a nursery slope, more of a nursery slope start into you don't just have to jump into cold DMing people. you know.
That's interesting to me though, because I've always thought about networking as being very much an in-person thing.
Yeah.
You're actually talking about it being an online thing.
Yeah. You know, I think when people think of networking, they're going to have to go to an industry event and like sit at a bar with a glass of wine and try and catch someone's eye.
Or come to days like today.
Which you can do, and that's great. But like most of it is really happening on LinkedIn. Like, you know, like just to use Tom as an example again. Before he launched the development sprint, he totaled that he had 170 different conversations with people on LinkedIn, and they all led somewhere. You know, he just told them about the idea. Like, for instance, Derek Brennan, he talked to, and he was like, "Oh, you can host the sprints here. Like, you know, you can use our facilities." He talked to a commissioner who put him in touch with another production company. So it's just all, you know, if you just start talking to people, it kind of builds momentum, and it's not just cold DMing. If you're just talking about LinkedIn, it's just talking about, you know, about.
And I suppose to come back to my original point, which was about making sure all opportunities are seen by everyone or able to be seen by everyone. I suppose the networking side of it, potentially, like if someone is looking for like someone for a job and they've already met you or they've seen your name somewhere, that's going to help like pick you up a little bit, isn't it? And I guess, like you said, surface you to that. Claire, do you have anything to say about the networking side of things?
I mean, I would look local. So if there's a particular museum or National Trust property or somewhere that you love visiting, they might have open days. They might have volunteer open days. They want to hear from you. So look on Eventbrite. I know an exec who used to work for Minnow Films, and she gave a fantastic talk about how she's moved into food sustainability. And what she did was not just go, oh, I'm going to apply for all these jobs that sound good. She went to all these events, all related to food and sustainability and food poverty, and she got to know people through that. And then during that year, she also sort of refigured her CV and applied not just jobs, but contacted companies. And she was able to speak from experience from people she'd met and events that she had attended. So all those little, you know, you're sending out your routes, as it were. They might take a while to fruit, but have a look, see what's on your doorstep.
It's interesting because we talked about passions before, but I think there's a slightly different version of that, which is expertise. And I almost accidentally did this. So I became an expert on freelancing in the industry and talking to freelancers because I was doing a lot of work. I was chair of the Back to Unscripted branch. And so then when I saw this opportunity to come up, I was like, hang on a minute, I think I'm qualified for this because I know a lot about it. And so I've used that expertise, and I'm now in a sort of job that's slightly adjacent but in the industry. And so, you know, that's the kind of thing that you need to identify within yourself. Have a real hard think about what is my expertise. And it might not be obvious, or it might be really obvious you hadn't even realised it, and you need to step back and think, oh, actually, I know a lot about this. And then it's about using that and trying to push forward with that. I'm going to come to some questions shortly, but before we do that, what I wanted to do... Oh, go on, Perjit, yeah, please.
Sorry, I'm really interrupted. One more thing about networking, which is that you don't need to network with new people as well. So there's some theory around this, so your dormant and your weak ties. So there are people in your life that you probably neglected. They might be the first person that you met, you know, when you were in the industry. They might be somebody who sat in the same office with you. You didn't get to know them particularly well. And reactivating those people and bringing them back into your life is actually much easier than finding new people. So if you're not a confident networker, or you don't necessarily want to throw yourself into this kind of space, the first thing that you can do that's really easy is just look through your LinkedIn, look through your phone, and just think, who have I neglected, who's now actually doing something really interesting that I might want to kind of reconnect with, who have I not spoken to, but actually I sort of, you know, we used to make cups of tea together. Like, that's a really nice kind of simple place to start, and you'll find that you've got like dozens of those. If you've been in the industry for sort of more than 5 years, you'll have tons of those people, and you can just start talking to them, and that's just a really easy kind of comfortable place to start.
Yeah, and on that, you can just say to them, like, hi, how are you? Right? You don't have to tell them.
Because they know who you are.
Yeah, like any of that sort of LinkedIn networking, is really just a conversation, a normal conversation. If you jump in with, hi, I'm a fractional creative director of marketing, and all that's not the way to start a conversation, just to say hello and see what they say back, and then start a chat, and then, 4 or 5 messages in, might talk about something a bit more like work. But, it's just nicer to see it as, I'm just going to chat to this person and see what happens.
Be a bit human about it, right?
Yeah, it's not all about like, oh, it's like a job with a CV.
Yeah.
It does open, the opportunity there is to be more open than having to send your CV in and have a formal interview. It's just, we're chatting about something we like, and that might lead to somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's sort of what I was saying before about, it seems like the thing where you end up might not be obvious when you start, but you sort of need to go on a bit of a journey with it and find what your route is.
Yeah, and I think, the old world that we had, which was sort of, waiting for a job to come up and then applying to it, and all that is that's how it used to be. So and it still is to some certain extent. But the opportunity on LinkedIn is to put some stuff out there and see what comes back, right? It's like a real mind shift you've got to do. And the things that come back, if you do put yourself out there, are not things that you will expect. Go on all sorts of tangents. Well, God, no, they were going to say that to me, or like introduce me to this person. But it's a different mindset of like, oh, have I got this job? Thank you, Mr. Gatekeeper. To I'm in about 30 chats with people, and some are at this stage and some are at that stage, and something might happen from one of these chats and you don't really know what. So I know that sounds scary, but it's also quite exciting.
Yeah, and this is another thing that I think, isn't it, that this is a really exciting thing. I started off by saying it can be daunting, but it can also be really exciting because it opens up more opportunities. Although there's a little side, almost accidental side to this, which Claire, you mentioned to me a while back, which was actually you've never felt more valued in a job. You said to me about the just even the level of the respect that you've gained, like in your press officer job. You've sort of So has that been a sort of accidental, happy accident?
I think actually that was to do with the CEO of Rothschild Foundation, who actually was a commissioner of Radio 3 for 15 years, and he's just a very people-led person. So when you join, first of all they say, what training do you want to do? And I'm sitting there going, first day, and they want to help and be nice, and then you get a tour of the whole place, and you have a cup of tea with the CEO, and he goes, yeah, TV, why don't we do something? And that sort of shocked me because, I was quite new. I was very new, and I've worked with the press before, but it's only a small part of my job, and they were genuinely interested. So I think it's not individual to that company, but I do think having the stability for a bit, and just lucky to have landed in a place where they have internships paid with accommodation a whole year, where you get training and on-the-job experience in everything from conservation work through to their wildlife side to marketing, and they are very proactive in encouraging people to contact them and to speak to them, and I think that for me was quite a shock.
Well, I guess in our industry, often we don't necessarily feel as valued as we should do. I'm going to just move on to the last question before we try and get some questions from the audience. So we was going to ask, what is the one thing, what it doesn't have to be a bit of advice, but what was the one thing that you would say to people who were coming up to you and saying, right, how do I start to build my portfolio career? Let's go this way. So Perjit, should we start with you?
I think I'd just repeat what I said earlier, which is start by just understanding sort of what makes you you, what your skills are, what's unique about you, and also what you love. So that thing that Andy mentioned, your skills plus your passion equals sort of probably where you're going to end up going next. So that's what I'd say.
I think you've got to do a skills-based CV. So if you need some advice on that, don't have any projects on it, or very, very few. Take out the word TV if you're not applying if it's not a non-TV job. And, we're really happy to help people, so get in touch. And probably my one big tip I got from a recruiter was, when you get asked why are you leaving TV? You know, it's so glamorous and exciting. And basically, they're not asking you that. They're asking you, why are you going to be committed to this job, to their job and their company? And, you know, they want to hear that you've been thinking about this for a while and that you've been retraining. They really don't want to know about a TV crisis, lack of jobs, there's no commissioning, because they literally will just switch off. So yeah, think about forward and positive.
Yeah, just on that, I would sort of say, just to reframe the scary environment. I know we had a nice ladder in TV which you could like ascend, but that's now gone away, right? So what we're left with is what I would see, to use a metaphor, as a map, right? There's a big map out there where you can travel around, and there's all sorts of new opportunities even in adjacent areas like podcasting and brands and the creative economy, and it's just relating that to what you guys said, which is what do you love and what are you really good at, and how can you go and start conversations in those new destinations on the map. So.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to go to a couple of questions in the room. Is Zoe around? There's a question from Zoe. Ed, we got a mic to take to Zoe.
I
think Zoe's just here at the front. Yeah, she's got her hand up here.
And I have to apologize, I'm losing my voice. But my question was, as someone who has had a career in a different field, what does it look like to transition into a portfolio career that includes film or TV?
So it's a question that you don't come from TV at all, and you're coming into TV.
Yes.
Not what I've experienced. What can I just ask a bit more about what it is you're coming?
So I originally have a background in actually adventure travel and tourism, but basically working as a fixer, and so have a logistics background and planning, but I've always wanted to work in production, and I'm now looking to transition into that space and kind of pulse, like you said, a skills-based TV into that.
Well, I'd like to just give you an example from where, like, sort of linear TV and, say, branded content is meeting. So you said you like sort of adventure, travel type stuff. So, like, for example, to everyone, Expedia has its own production company, right? So, you know, if you wanted to work at the intersection of those things, you could just approach Expedia and go, I want to work at your production company. You know, it's just like, there are little pockets of space in which you can sort of interrogate, which sort of bring together the way you want to work and what you really are good at.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is David Toms around? David's over here, Ed. So I don't know.
Come over here.
Yeah, he's just over there. So there's a question about networking. So David, if you want to go for that once Ed gets over to you.
I was sending a couple of questions, so was it the one about
the networking one?
The networking one.
Thank you.
So it's just mainly a question about, I think the elephant in the room for a lot of people in TV is that there's a lot of neurodiversity in TV, and we are naturally not a fan of networking. So I suppose it's just about how we can facilitate that better within the industry, and whether there's any thoughts on what that might look like within that kind of portfolio career of taking opportunities and meeting people in other industries and stuff like that in a wider sense, not just TV.
Can you go?
I'm not a fan of public speaking, but I'm here because I'm talking about something that I really care about and passionate about. So if there's something that you do feel comfortable talking about, or, you know, like I said, you know, the exec who wanted to go into food sustainability, lean into those things where, you know, you are got an interest, rather than a room full of people with a mix of industries. So I would say look local and in things that you're interested in.
Can I, sorry, I'm just going to add to that. I don't have an answer at all, but just to say, I actually deliver training in networking skills for screen skills, so it's a sort of 2-3 hour session I do every now and then. And people ask me this question a lot, and I don't have an answer for it. So I just think it needs some research or some thinking or something, because I don't think there's an obvious answer to that, to your point, because I think you're completely right. I do not think networking events are set up for neurodivergent people. And so I think if you're accessing that space, it can be really complicated, and it's working out how we make those spaces better and friendlier for everybody, I think is sort of incumbent on us, and we haven't done it. So I just think it's like a conversation that needs to be had, I think, as well.
Okay, we need to turn the little the alarm off on that. But anyway, that literally just tells us that time is up. So thank you. Yes, exactly. Before we finish up, I just want to do a little plug. Action for Freelancers is doing some new sessions called AfF Meets. Our first one is AfF Meets Kate Phillips. That's happening in a week and a half. There is some QR codes over by the Action for Freelancers desk over there. So if you want to put yourself forward to be there for that session, then please use the QR code and you can apply on there. So take a little look. It'd be great to see some people there. But thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for our panel.